In the arid plains of modern-day Iraq, beneath the dust of millennia, lie the foundations of the world's first civilization, Sumer. It was here, in the fertile crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, that humanity took its first great leap from scattered tribes into organized society. The Sumerians gave us writing, the wheel, complex law, and the first true cities. For centuries their history was lost, their language a silent mystery. But in the mid-19th century, archaeologists excavating the ruins of Nineveh unearthed a treasure trove, the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. Within this library were over 30,000 clay tablets inscribed with the wedge-shaped script known as cuneiform. As scholars painstakingly deciphered this ancient language, they found more than just records of trade and royal decrees. They found epic poems and detailed cosmological accounts that predated the biblical texts of Genesis by thousands of years. These tablets told the story of their gods, but not as ethereal spiritual beings. They were described as physical individuals who descended from the heavens in great ships, walked the earth, and directly governed humanity. The Sumerians had a collective name for these beings, the Anunnaki, a word whose most direct translation means, "those who from heaven to earth came." And so the picture that began to emerge was not one of distant symbolic deities, but a structured society of powerful beings who interacted directly with the earliest humans. To the Sumerians, the Anunnaki were not vague spiritual forces. They had hierarchy, purpose, and lineage. Their world was organized, much like the cities the Sumerians themselves built, with order, authority, and clear domains of influence. To understand the Anunnaki, we must first understand their origins, as recorded in the oldest Mesopotamian cosmology. At the very beginning, in tablets predating organized religion as we know it, the universe existed as a singular, unified realm. The Sumerians called it An-Ki, a primordial state where heaven and earth were one. From this unity emerged separation. An, the sky, vast, elevated, and eternal. Ki, the earth, fertile, grounding, and life-bearing. This moment of separation marked the first act of creation in Sumerian thought, and it is from this division that the earliest divine beings arose. An and Ki in these earliest myths are not abstract concepts, they are progenitors. From them came a pantheon of beings who would govern cosmic order, nature, and human life. Among them were the Anunnaki, whose name reflects not only origin but function, beings tied to heaven yet active upon the earth. Their presence was not remote. They were believed to have walked sacred sites, founded cities, delivered laws, and structured civilization itself. And unlike later mythologies, where the divine remains distant, the Sumerian tablets place these figures close, present, supervising, guiding, sometimes even disputing one another in matters of policy and governments. Archaeology does not claim to confirm these beings as literal visitors, but what it does confirm is the seriousness with which the Sumerians regarded them.
in temple inscriptions, royal seals, and administrative tablets, the Anunnaki appear not merely as religious figures, but as foundational authorities behind kingship, agriculture, astronomy, and social order. In their worldview, humans were not accidental. Civilization was not chance. Knowledge, irrigation, urban planning, writing, these were gifts deliberately granted. The early Sumerians saw their achievements not as human triumph alone, but as a continuation of a divine program set in motion by those who came before. In the next stage of this journey, we will explore the earliest members of this divine lineage, beginning with An, the sovereign of the heavens, and the creation hierarchy that shaped the Sumerian understanding of power, order, and the origins of life.
After the emergence of An and Ki, the Sumerians described a hierarchy of divine authority that mirrored the structure of the cities they themselves were building. At the top of this celestial order stood An, sovereign of the heavens. His domain was not limited to the sky alone. He embodied ultimate authority over all the other deities, the forces of nature, and the unfolding of human events. An's presence in the texts is consistently formal and deliberate. He is often depicted as a distant overseer, yet intimately involved in the maintenance of cosmic order. His decrees set the framework within which other gods acted, and through them the first civilizations were guided. While An did not walk the earth as frequently as some of his descendants, his influence was omnipresent. Decisions made in temples, laws inscribed on clay tablets, and rituals performed in cities like Eridu and Nippur all traced their legitimacy back to his authority. Beneath An, the Anunnaki took on specific roles. Each was assigned responsibility for a particular aspect of existence. Enlil commanded the air and the winds, shaping the physical environment and ensuring balance. Enki presided over waters and wisdom, introducing the knowledge necessary for human survival and advancement. Ninhursag nurtured the earth, overseeing fertility, growth, and the continuity of life. These divisions were not merely symbolic. They reflected the Sumerians' understanding of how natural and social order were maintained, a system in which the divine and the human were interwoven. The texts also describe the Anunnaki's interaction with one another. Councils of the gods convened to make judgments, deliberate over human affairs, and resolve disputes. These gatherings, recorded in ceremonial inscriptions, suggest a complex governance, echoing the administrative structures of Sumerian city-states. Such organization implies that the Sumerians perceived the universe itself as an extension of their societal order, structured, hierarchical, and guided by principle. Through An, the Sky Father, the Sumerians established a model of authority that would influence kingship, religion, and culture for millennia. Understanding An is essential, for he represents the foundation upon which the entire Anunnaki framework rests, a framework that would shape both the divine narrative and the human history that followed. Beneath An, Enlil assumed a central role in both the divine and terrestrial order.
Often referred to as the Lord of the Air or Keeper of the Winds, Enlil was entrusted with authority over the atmosphere, the movement of storms, and the very breath of life that sustained the plains of Sumer. In the texts, he is depicted as both powerful and exacting, a figure whose judgments ensured balance between the gods and humanity. Enlil's influence extended beyond nature into the realm of human civilization. He was the god who conferred kingship, legitimizing rulers and their authority over cities. The Sumerians believed that the right to govern came directly from him, and that obedience to divine law was essential for maintaining prosperity and social harmony. Temple inscriptions and royal dedications repeatedly acknowledge his role as a guarantor of order, reinforcing the connection between the heavens and human society. The relationship between Enlil and other Anunnaki is particularly noteworthy. While An remained largely a distant authority, Enlil's involvement was more immediate. He presided over councils of the gods, adjudicating disputes, directing the allocation of resources, and guiding human development. The tablets describe his presence as commanding yet measured, emphasizing that power was exercised within a framework of responsibility and cosmic balance. Enlil also appears in narratives that illustrate both his authority and restraint. For example, in flood accounts, he is described as determining the limits of human activity and at times intervening to correct imbalance. These stories do not present him as capricious, but as a guardian of order, whose actions were necessary to maintain harmony between the natural and human worlds. Through Enlil, the Sumerians conceptualized the intersection of divine authority and earthly governance. He embodied the principle that power, whether over wind, storm, or kings, must be guided by law and structure. Understanding Enlil is therefore essential to understanding the broader Anunnaki framework, a system in which the divine hierarchy mirrors the structure, rules, and ambitions of the civilization itself. While Enlil oversaw air, authority, and the structure of human society, Enki held dominion over water, wisdom, and the subtle forces that sustained life. Known in the Sumerian texts as the Lord of the Abzu, Enki's domain was the fresh water beneath the earth, the source of fertility, agriculture, and abundance. Rivers, canals, and the hidden reservoirs of life were considered his realm, and through them he shaped both the land and the people who cultivated it. Enki's influence extended beyond natural resources. He was revered as the god of intelligence and creativity, the one who imparted skills, knowledge, and tools to humanity. Writing, mathematics, irrigation, and early medicine are among the achievements attributed to his guidance in the tablets. These gifts were not given arbitrarily. They were strategic, intended to enable humans to flourish under the supervision of the divine while maintaining the balance of the world. The texts present Enki as both thoughtful and deliberate. Unlike Enlil, whose judgments often asserted authority, Enki's interventions are described as calculated and precise, aimed at preserving harmony and fostering progress. He is depicted advising kings, teaching architects, and resolving crises in ways that required foresight and understanding. In stories concerning the creation of humankind, Enki plays a pivotal role, carefully crafting humans as functional partners in the maintenance of civilization. Enki's relationship with other Anunnaki illustrates the dynamics of divine governance. While Enlil represented the enforcement of order, Enki embodied guidance and adaptation. Together, they formed complementary forces, one ensuring structure, the other ensuring survival and ingenuity. This duality reflects the Sumerians' nuanced understanding of authority, acknowledging that civilization required both discipline and knowledge to endure. Through his association with water and wisdom, Enki became central to Sumerian thought not only as a god, but as a symbol of progress, intelligence, and the careful stewardship of life. In the broader Anunnaki framework, his presence ensured that creation was sustainable, human society was capable of growth, and the world remained in equilibrium. As the tablets reveal, Enki's influence persisted in every canal dug, every harvest planned, and every skill taught, a quiet, sustaining force shaping the development of the first cities and the civilization that would follow.
Alongside Enlil and Enki, the Sumerian pantheon recognized Nin-Hursag as the mother of all living things. Known as the Lady of the Sacred Mountain and Giver of Life, she presided over fertility, childbirth, and the growth of plants and animals. In the texts, her presence is closely tied to the earth itself, and she is often depicted as nurturing both the land and humanity, ensuring that life could flourish under the watchful eyes of the gods. Nin-Hursag's role extended beyond biological fertility. She was integral to the maintenance of balance and continuity within creation. By overseeing the growth of crops, the birth of livestock, and the well-being of humans, she provided the material foundation upon which Sumerian society could thrive. Her influence was reflected in rituals performed at temples, in agricultural cycles, and in the daily offerings that honored the sustaining power of life. The tablets also highlight her interaction with other Anunnaki. While Enlil enforced order and Enki imparted knowledge, Nin-Hursag ensured that these structures and skills could bear fruit. Her guidance made it possible the transformation of fertile land into productive fields and of human potential into organized labor, settlement, and culture. In this way, she was not only a nurturer, but a stabilizing force within the divine hierarchy, linking cosmic authority with earthly sustainability. Among the Anunnaki, Inanna occupies a unique position. Known as the Queen of Heaven and the Star of Heaven, she embodies aspects of power, desire, and authority that extend beyond the physical and natural domains governed by her siblings. In the Sumerian texts, Inanna is both a deity of human affairs and a celestial presence, overseeing the delicate balance between ambition, governance, and the cycles of life.
Inanna's influence is multifaceted. She presides over war and conflict, not as a chaotic force, but as a mechanism to maintain balance and enforce divine justice. Simultaneously, she governs love, fertility, and personal desire, integrating human motivation into the broader framework of civilization. Through her, the Sumerians explored the complex interplay between personal ambition and social order, recognizing that human actions are guided by both internal drive and external structure. The tablets describe Inanna engaging with other Anunnaki in councils, negotiations, and interventions that shape both divine and human realms. Unlike Enlil, who acts primarily through enforcement, or Enki, who imparts knowledge, Inanna's actions often reflect strategic insight, adaptability, and influence over the course of events. Her interactions illustrate the nuances of divine authority, showing that power is not uniform, but differentiated according to role, function, and purpose. Inanna is also central to mythological narratives that address transformation and journey. In stories such as her descent to the underworld, she demonstrates the necessity of facing boundaries, both mortal and divine, and returning with renewed authority and understanding. These tales, while symbolic, reflect the Sumerians' conceptualization of the divine as intimately involved in the moral, social, and political order of their world. Through Inanna, the Sumerians articulated a vision of balance in which energy, ambition, and desire are not opposed to order, but essential to it. Her presence complements the stabilizing influence of Ninhursag, the structured governance of Enlil, and the wisdom of Enki. Together, these deities form a network of responsibilities, each contributing to the maintenance of civilization and the guidance of humanity. Inanna's enduring significance lies in her ability to bridge the celestial and the human, the personal and the societal, the dynamic and the ordered.
In the ancient Sumerian accounts, the creation of humanity does not emerge from poetic abstraction or accidental cosmic forces. Instead, it is portrayed as a deliberate act, a solution to a growing tension among the Anunnaki. Their great cities, canals, and fields required labor. The earth, still young in their plans, demanded cultivation and structure. Over time, the burden of maintaining this world weighed upon them, and the need for a subordinate species became undeniable. It is here, according to the tablets, that Enki and Ninhursag assume central roles. While Enlil enforced order and oversaw the grand design, it was Enki who possessed the knowledge necessary for creation, and Ninhursag who embodied life itself. Together, they shaped a being unlike the creatures already inhabiting the earth, a form capable of reason, obedience, and endurance. The Sumerian texts described the process not as mystical creation, but as careful craftsmanship, a blend of earthly material and divine essence. Humanity, then, was fashioned with purpose to till the land, tend the flocks, and support the great cities of the gods.
The early humans are portrayed not as inferior mistakes, but as engineered companions, essential contributors to a vast divine project. Yet even within this origin, the tablets hint at complexity. Enki, often depicted as compassionate toward humanity, ensured that humans possessed curiosity and intellect, qualities that would later bring both progress and conflict. Ninhursag, meanwhile, imbued life with resilience, making humanity not merely tools, but beings capable of adaptation and growth. In the earliest settlements, places like Eridu, regarded as the first city, humanity worked alongside divine overseers, constructing canals, forming agricultural systems, and participating in rituals meant to align earthly order with celestial will. Civilization, in this portrayal, is not a human invention alone, but a shared undertaking between mortal and divine. The creation of humanity, according to these ancient accounts, is not a moment of benevolent miracle, nor a result of cosmic chance. It is an act rooted in purpose, collaboration, and necessity, and it marks the beginning of a new relationship, one defined not just by labor and obedience, but by learning, loyalty, and the gradual awakening of human identity within the vast landscape of Anunnaki authority. As humanity settles into its role, the story prepares to shift from the origins of life to the rise of the earliest cities, centers of innovation, governance, and faith, where humans and gods coexisted in the dawn of civilization.
From Eridu, the seed of civilization spread outward across the southern plains. As populations grew and knowledge expanded, new centers of culture and worship emerged, each shaped not only by human ambition, but by the continuing influence of the Anunnaki. The Sumerians did not see their cities as accidental clusters of people. They saw them as appointed domains, each aligned with a divine presence and purpose. Among these rising centers, Nippur held a position unlike any other. It was not the largest nor the richest, yet it was regarded as the spiritual heart of Sumer. Here stood the temple of Enlil, the god of authority and command. In Nippur, kings, regardless of the city they ruled, came to affirm their legitimacy. To govern in Sumer was to be recognized in this sacred place, where earthbound power sought its mandate from the heavens. Nippur reminded the people that order flowed downward from the divine, and that even rulers existed within a greater cosmic structure. To the northwest rose Uruk, a city of stone, innovation, and remarkable cultural energy. This was the domain of Inanna, the radiant goddess of power, passion, and sovereignty. Uruk would become legendary not only for its temples and monumental walls, but for its role in shaping writing, administration, and the very rhythm of urban life. Here, clay tablets recorded trade, myth, and law, ensuring that memory could endure beyond generations. Uruk streets witnessed festivals, processions, and the daily hum of a society learning to manage its own growth. Through each new settlement, the foundational idea endured.
Civilization was a shared enterprise, a collaboration between mortal effort and divine intention. The gods supplied the blueprint, humans brought it to life. But growth brings questions, and questions lead to challenge. As cities rose and power expanded, the boundaries between divine will and human desire began to blur. A new phase of the story approaches, one marked by ambition, innovation, and the first fractures of a world learning its own strength.
With the growth of cities like Eridu, Nippur, and Uruk, the Sumerian world entered a new stage, the establishment of kingship and dynastic rule. The tablets describe these early rulers not simply as human authorities, but as figures appointed and sanctioned by the Anunnaki. They were intermediaries, bridging the divine will and human society, and their legitimacy was inseparable from the gods who watched over the land. In these records, kings often bear titles that reflect their sacred origin, chosen of the gods, he who is under the care of Enlil, or guided by Enki. Their role was both administrative and religious. They organized irrigation systems, oversaw trade, and enforced laws, while also performing rituals, offering tribute, and maintaining temples. Governance was therefore a collaboration of human skill and divine sanction, a balance that defined Sumerian civilization for centuries. The tablets also suggest that early dynasties included individuals with extraordinary longevity and stature, sometimes described in ways that border on the mythic. Whether these accounts were symbolic, exaggeration, or rooted in oral tradition, they indicate the Sumerians' desire to tie rulership to a direct connection with the divine. Kings were not separate from the gods. They were extensions of them, accountable to the higher authority of the Anunnaki, and in turn responsible for guiding their people according to sacred principles. Each dynasty marked shifts in power and influence, reflecting the dynamic interaction between cities and the gods. Conflicts between rulers, disputes over territory, and the rise and fall of dynasties were often framed in mythological terms, attributing human events to the decisions and interventions of the Anunnaki. By situating political history within a divine framework, the Sumerians reinforced the idea that civilization itself depended on both human effort and adherence to sacred order. Through these kings and dynasties, the Anunnaki's influence extended far beyond the physical presence of their temples. Governance, law, agriculture, and culture were all viewed as part of a larger, divinely sanctioned system. The rise of dynastic rule represents a critical evolution. Humanity was no longer merely assisting the gods. It was becoming an active participant in the structured, ordered world that the Anunnaki had designed. The story of kingship, with its blend of human ambition and divine oversight, sets the stage for Sumer's most enduring narratives, the epics, myths, and moral lessons that would influence generations far beyond the Fertile Crescent.
Among the many stories preserved on Sumerian tablets, One stands apart for its scale and significance, the account of a great flood. Long before it appears in later biblical texts, the Sumerians described a cataclysm that reshaped the world, involving both humanity and the Anunnaki who oversaw it. According to the tablets, the flood was not arbitrary. It was a response to imbalance. Human populations had grown, cities expanded, and in some accounts, disorder had begun to outweigh harmony. The gods convened to consider the state of the earth, weighing the progress of civilization against the potential for chaos. Enlil, as the enforcer of order, is often depicted as the god who sanctioned the flood, a decisive act intended to restore balance and remind humanity of divine authority. Yet the texts also depict compassion and foresight. Enki, the god of wisdom, counseled restraint and devised a method to preserve life. He chose Zuyasudra, a devout and capable human, to survive the flood, instructing him to build a vessel capable of withstanding the waters and to bring upon it animals, seeds, and his family. In this way, the continuity of human civilization was secured, demonstrating that divine judgment was tempered by guidance, foresight, and planning. The flood narrative reflects more than a historical or environmental event. It illustrates the Sumerians' understanding of the relationship between the gods and humanity. Destruction was not capricious, it was corrective. Preservation was not accidental, it was deliberate. Through Zuyasudra's survival, the tablets emphasize the principle that civilization, while dependent on human labor, remained under divine oversight, subject to the judgments and interventions of the Anunnaki. Rituals, prayers, and temple inscriptions later commemorated these events, ensuring that the lessons of balance, obedience, and wisdom endured across generations. The story of the flood thus occupies a dual place, as a historical memory and as a moral framework, illustrating the responsibilities of both gods and humans in maintaining the order of the world. The narrative of Zuyasudra, like the rise of kingship, underscores a recurring theme in Sumerian thought. Civilization is a collaboration, guided by divine law, shaped by human endeavor, and sustained through careful observation of cosmic principles. The flood, while devastating, was also formative, preparing the ground for renewed growth, new cities, and a deeper understanding of humanity's place in the world.
Following the flood, Sumerian civilization continued to grow, and with it, stories that explored the human condition in relation to the divine. Among these, the Epic of Gilgamesh stands as the most profound. Preserved on clay tablets, it tells of a king who was 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, and whose life illustrates the tension between mortal limitation and the influence of the gods. Gilgamesh, ruler of Uruk, embodies ambition, strength, and the desire for eternal legacy. Yet his journey is defined by encounters with the divine and with mortality itself. His companionship with Enkidu, a wild man created by the gods to challenge him, highlights the interplay of human relationships, divine will, and the responsibilities of leadership. Together, their experiences reveal lessons on friendship, order, and the consequences of action within a world overseen by the Anunnaki.
The epic also explores the theme of mortality, a concept that concerned both gods and humans. Despite Gilgamesh's semi-divine nature, he cannot escape death. His quest for immortality leads him to seek counsel from Enki and other deities who impart wisdom rather than literal salvation. In this, the story conveys the Sumerian understanding that human life is bounded, that ambition and achievement must respect cosmic order, and that knowledge and legacy are the enduring means by which humans approach the divine. Moreover, the narrative demonstrates the presence of the Anunnaki in human affairs. They are arbiters of fate, witnesses of deeds, and participants in the shaping of cities and culture. Gilgamesh's challenges are rarely solitary. Divine decisions and interventions frame his story, reminding the audience that civilization is inseparable from the guidance, oversight, and occasional restraint of the gods. The Epic of Gilgamesh serves as both literature and moral compass. It situates humanity within a structured universe governed by divine principles, yet enriched by human endeavor. Through the trials of Gilgamesh, the Sumerians examined leadership, justice, mortality, and the pursuit of meaning, themes that resonate far beyond the walls of Uruk and echo the ongoing influence of the Anunnaki on the shaping of civilization. By following Gilgamesh's journey, the Sumerians articulated a vision in which gods and humans coexist, each influencing the other, each.
As centuries passed, the influence of the Anunnaki continued, yet the centers of power shifted. Sumer's earliest cities, with their temples and kings, gradually gave way to new political and cultural forces. Among these, Babylon emerged as a prominent city-state, and with it came the rise of Marduk, a deity who would redefine the hierarchy of the gods in Mesopotamian thought. Marduk's ascent did not erase the older Anunnaki, rather it restructured divine authority. Tablets describe a cosmic council in which the younger god was granted supremacy after demonstrating wisdom, strength, and decisive leadership. Enlil, Enki, and the other elder deities retained influence, but Marduk's rise symbolized a transition in both divine governance and human civilization. As kingship in Babylon grew more centralized, so too did the religious narratives that supported it, reflecting a realignment of power among the gods. Babylon itself became a center of learning, law, and monumental architecture. The city's ziggurats and temples were both practical and symbolic, connecting humans with the celestial order while asserting the authority of Marduk. Inscriptions depict the city as a carefully organized society under divine guidance, where human rulers acted in concert with the gods to maintain cosmic balance. This period also illustrates the adaptability of mythology. Stories and roles of the Anunnaki evolved to reflect changing political landscapes. Deities who once dominated Sumerian cities were honored in Babylonian contexts, yet their functions were reframed to support the centralized rule of Marduk. This continuity and transformation reveal the dynamic relationship between humans and the divine, and the ways in which culture and belief adapt to societal shifts. As this lens, the Sumerian and Babylonian narratives are not merely historical records,
They are reflections of human understanding of power, governance, and cosmic order. The Anunnaki remain central, but the stories demonstrate that divine authority, like human authority, is responsive to circumstance, negotiation, and the passage of time. As the world transitioned from Sumerian city-states to Babylonian hegemony, the legacy of the Anunnaki.
From the earliest cities of Sumer to the grand temples of Babylon, the Anunnaki shaped the foundation of civilization. Across centuries, their presence in myths, tablets, and inscriptions reflects a worldview in which human society and divine order were inseparable. They were not distant abstractions. They were authorities, teachers, and custodians of the laws, labor, and knowledge that allowed civilization to flourish. Even as political powers shifted, the stories of the Anunnaki persisted. Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Inanna, and the others remained central figures, guiding kings, influencing agriculture, and framing the moral and practical dimensions of human life. Their narratives provided explanations for natural phenomena, structured governance, and the origins of human ingenuity. Through them, the Sumerians articulated a vision in which human progress was both enabled and bounded by the divine. The legacy of the Anunnaki extends beyond Mesopotamia. Their myths influenced subsequent cultures, from Akkadian and Babylonian civilizations to Assyrian kingship, and even later traditions in the wider Near East. Temples, rituals, and epic stories preserved their memory, embedding principles of law, social order, and ethical responsibility into the evolving human narrative. Yet the enduring significance of the Anunnaki lies not only in their historical or mythological presence, but in the way they illustrate the Sumerians' understanding of the universe. Civilization, according to these ancient texts, is the product of collaboration between gods and humans, between authority and labor, between wisdom and action. The Anunnaki symbolize the intersection of knowledge, order, and purpose, demonstrating that human society thrives when aligned with both natural and divine principles. By tracing their story from the separation of heaven and earth to the rise of kings, cities, and empires, one sees a civilization shaped as much by ideas as by labor, as much by belief as by practical achievement. The Anunnaki remain an enduring reminder of humanity's earliest attempts to comprehend its place in the cosmos, to organize life, interpret destiny, and honor the forces that govern both earth and sky. In studying these ancient gods, we are offered a window into the foundations of history, the origins of law and culture, and the profound ways in which myth and reality converge to shape human understanding. Their story concludes not with an ending, but with continuity, a legacy of thought, structure, and imagination that endures long after the clay tablets have weathered and the cities have faded.